بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. صلى الله عليك وعلى أهل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. صلى الله عليك يا مولاي وابن مولاي، يا غريب يا مظلوم كربلاء. فاز من اعتصم بحبلكم، أمين والله من لجأ إلى حصنكم. يا ليتنا كنا معكم سيدي، فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. قال الله في محكم كتابه الكريم بعد أن أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله، وأعلم من الله ما لا تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم وبلغ رسوله الكريم، وإنا على ذلك لشاهدين. عطروا مجلسكم بذكر محمد وآل محمد. الثانية على حب الحسن والحسين. لتعجيل فرج صاحب العصر والزمان. الثالثة بأطيب أصواتكم. In Surah Yusuf, in verse 86, قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. Speaking on behalf of Jacob, Yaqub, the father of Yusuf, and the tragedy that had befallen him, where he says, indeed, I complain my anguish and my sorrow only to Allah, and I know from Allah that which you do not know. Ash-shakwa in the Arabic language is the complaint. And there are narrations in reference to shakwa. The Prophet لذكره صلوا عليه وآله اللهم صل على he says, من شكا مصيبة نزلت به. He who complains, who tells people who in complaining of a tragedy that has befallen him. فإنما يشكو ربه. He is in turn complaining of Allah. In another narration from Amir al-Mu'mineen, ومن أصبح يشكو مصيبة نزلت به فإنما يشكو ربه. And he who is complaining of a problem that has befallen him, of a tragedy that has befallen him, is like he who is complaining about his Lord. وعن الصادق عليه السلام من شكا إلى مؤمن فكأنما شكا إلى الله ومن شكا إلى فاسق فكأنما شكا من الله. طبعا هو نص الرواية مو هكذا. من شكا همه لمؤمن فكأنما شكا إلى الله ومن شكا همه لفاسق فكأنما شكا الله. And this third narration from our Imam al-Sadiq, he says, he who complains about a trial or a tribulation or a tragedy that has befallen him is like he who's complaining, if he complains it to a non-believer, a fasiq. What is a fasiq? A fasiq is he who does not adhere to the ruling of Allah. He who does not adhere to the obligations set forth by Allah. And عندنا بالروايات, the individual who does not adhere to God's will, who does not pray, who does not fast, who refuses to give khums or sadaqah, the individual who drinks, wal-'iyadu billah, the individual who listens to music, the individual who, many narrations, anything that Allah tells you to obey and you disobey, that individual is considered a fasiq. He who complains about the tragedies that have befallen him to a fasiq, it's like he who has complained about Allah. He is complaining that Allah has bestowed a problem upon me. And he who complains it to a mu'min. A mu'min here could be the opposite of fasiq, means he who adheres, or a mu'min could be he who believes in the wilaya of Ali wa abna'u Ali, salawatullahi alayhi wa alayhim. That individual, if you complain to them, it is as if you are complaining to Allah. وَشَتَّان. There is a large difference between complaining from Allah and to Allah. In this verse, we find that Jacob قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. Al-bath in the Arabic language is anything that you drive out. Bathi in this sense means I complain or I divulge my sorrow that I can no longer bottle up, that I can no longer hold. We see something similar when someone gets hurt. Sometimes if it's a prick of a needle, you can withstand it. You don't need to scream. But when it's severe pain, what happens? You scream without wanting to. The reaction is involuntary. Or, for example, when you send something to someone else, yabuth. So al-bath is to what? Is to send out. So he says, I send out my anguish, the pain that I cannot withhold, and my sorrow. To whom? Ilallah. Specifically to Allah. There, we have to ask, why does the Prophet عليه السلام وعلى محمد وآله أفضل التحية وأتم الصلاة والسلام اللهم صل على محمد. Why does he say this? There is a narration عن الصادق عليه السلام. He says, إن يعقوب أتى ملكا بناحيتهم. Jacob came to a king within their area, within Canaan. Because we know Jacob lived in the Canaanite land, right? By the way, the Canaanite land is modern day Palestine. Okay? All of that is the land of the Canaanites. Nonetheless, they say this king looks at him and he says to him, أأنت إبراهيم؟ قال لا. قال أأنت إسحاق؟ قال لا. He asks him, are you Abraham? He says, no, I'm not. Are you Isaac? He says, no. He says, then who are you? He says, I am the grandson of Ibrahim, the son of Isaac. I am Jacob. He says, Jacob, how are you? How are you so old while being so young? How did the white beard and the white face and the white hair, how do you look like you're a senior when you are so young? قال الحزن على يوسف. He says, my sorrow over my son, Joseph. He said to him, قال لقد بلغ بك الحزن يا يعقوب. Your sorrow has reached this level. He's almost astonished at this. Yaqub responds. He says, إِنَّا مَعَاشِرَ الْأَنْبِيَاءِ أَسْرَعُ شَيْءٍ بِنَا الْبَلَاءِ. We, the prophets, the fastest thing that comes to us is the trials. البلاء هو الامتحان اخوان. البلاء هسه احنا مثلا in the Arabic language when we say بلاء أو بلوى, what do we think of? We think of a problem. مو صحيح? The reality is بلاء يعني امتحان. So he is the quickest thing to us, he says, is that we are tested. ثم الأمثل فالأمثل. And after us, those who come closer to us, then those who come closer to us. That's why when we come, we see who has more bala. يقول رسول الله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه ما أوذي نبي مثل ما أوذيت. No prophet has been hurt the way that I have been hurt. Now هنا نحن نسأل Maulana, John was beheaded. Not only that, they say he was chopped up with saws. Ibrahim was thrown into fire. Yaqub lost his son. Nuh lost his son and his wife. Some of the prophets were killed. In fact, the narration says that Bani Israel used to kill a prophet every day and night. And they would go around as if nothing happened, go shopping in the streets. So, Ya Rasulullah, kayfa udhit? How was the prophet hurt? Maulana, the prophet was not only hurt physically, he was hurt through his family. We know that the hardest things to deal with is what? Is emotional pain, right? We all know the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. La Maulana. Broken bones can heal, but a shattered heart doesn't. Sahih. Broken bones heal. Ask any fighter here. Broken bones heal very quickly. But when you break someone's heart, when you hurt their emotion, when you threaten them, today I saw a video for these dogs in Syria, these lu'ana. After killing the family, they have cornered 3 kids, Maulana, 9, 10, and 8, something like that, young children. And he's holding the knife and he says, you choose amongst yourself, who should I kill first? Who wants to die first? Wallah, abkani, dhakarni bi abna Muslim. Al-la'in, abna Muslim, he made them choose who he kills first. Subhanallah, al-qawm abna al-qawm. Al-qawm abna al-baghaya. Wallahi wa billah. What kind of heart, what kind of individual? And some of us can't stand seeing the blood of an animal, let alone the blood of a human, let alone the blood of a child. ولكن سبحان الله. هؤلاء قوم استحوذ عليهم الشيطان. Where are United Nations? Where is the human rights? Or do the human rights in the United Nations works for everybody but for the Muslims? Is it a human right to live under dignity? But when it comes to a Muslim, it doesn't. Where were the human rights in the United Nations in Israel? Where were they? What was left for them to do? Where are they today in Syria? What happened in Lebanon? Why are they quiet? Maulana? Or is apartheid and the harm was only in the past? Or is it that pain is only felt by the white man? How do you go from being an ISIS leader to being the president of a country? And we see that your followers are doing the exact same thing. ولكن we say, إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. Anyway, so the prophet Jacob, he says, Al-amthalu fal-amthal. And after the prophets are those closest and those closest. That's why, Maulana, when we see what happens to Imam al-Hussein and what happens to the Ahlul Bayt, what do we say? We say, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. You look, it's been 1400 years. Not only have we been the minority, not only have we been the oppressed. For what? I want somebody to go down history, to go down the lane of history, through the path of history, and tell me what crime has the Shia committed. If you say we are kuffar, we are blasphemers, fine, don't consider us a part of you. You already don't. You already consider us like rawafid. What is the purpose of our killing? Rahimallah, one of our scholars, he was sitting in a communication, in a conference with them, a group from them. And they were talking about into Shia, into Rawafid, into. He answered them with one thing. He says, 1400 years we have been the minority. You were able to end the Maturidiyyan, you're able to end the Mu'tazilan, you're able to end almost every single group that stood up against you. You have yet to end الجعفرية الإمامية الاثنا عشرية that you call Rawafid. If that is not proof that Allah wants us to be here, show me another. مولانا المعتزلة منو بقى من المعتزلة؟ الماتريدية منو بقى من عندهم؟ ترى small groups, fringe groups, they're scared to say who they are. And the Shia for 1400 years, the sword has been at their throats for simply saying أشهد أن عليا ولي الله. اللهم صل على. They say that this king, he turned to Jacob and he fulfilled his request. As Jacob leaves, he is approached by Jibreel. فقال له يا يعقوب إن الله يقرأك السلام ويقول لك شكوتني إلى الناس. Jibreel says, oh Yaqub, Allah sends you his salam, his peace, and he says, did you complain about me to the people? شكوتني إلى الناس فعفر وجهه في التراب. They say he prostrated and he wiped his face on the dirt. وقال ربي زلة أقلنيها. A slip, forgive my slips. فلا أعود بعد هذا أبدا. I shall never return to such an act. Jibreel returns, he says, يا يعقوب إن السلام يقرئك السلام ويقول لك قد أقلتك فلا تعد تشكوني إلى خلقي. Do not return and complain about me and what I have tested you with to the rest of creation. The question that we should ask is why, Maulana? Why is it that we should not? Let me ask you a question. If you right now are going through a hard time and you knew the person in front of you wants to ridicule and mock you, would you tell them the problem you're going through? Absolutely not. Why? Because you don't want to be the subject for ridicule and mockery. When you know that the non-believer is behind you and he wants a reason to say, where is your Lord? Why doesn't he show mercy? Why, Maulana? Because he's short-sighted, he doesn't realize the mercy of Allah. And you gave up on the mercy of Allah, hence you're complaining. Because what is a complaint? If you know that the light is at the end of the tunnel, why would you complain? Mo? I said to draw a small example. When you're driving with your little kids, you know where you're going, they don't know. What do they keep on saying? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? أنت مولانا شو تسوي همين؟ تقولهم, what do you say to them? Oh, we're 50 kilometers away? Or what do you say? We're almost there. Almost there. Just a couple of moments. Why? Because you know the outcome. صح ولا لا? And if you don't know the outcome, then you try to make them feel good about it. Maulana, the same thing we should take with ourselves, between our relationship with Allah. We shouldn't be saying, are we there yet? We should be saying, Insha'Allah, we will get there when Allah wills it necessary. Nonetheless, قال إنما أشكو بثي وحزني إلى الله. They say after that narration, when the sons of Yaqub came to him, what did he say? Maulana, when they reminded him of Yusuf, what did he say? Who remembers the وَقَالَ بَلْ سَوَّلَتْ لَكُمْ أَنفُسُكُمْ أَمْرًا فَصَبْرٌ جَمِيلٌ عسى الله أن يأتي بهم جميعا إنه هو العليم الحكيم وتولى عنهم وقال يا أسفا على يوسف. Here they say شنو? They say he turned his face away from them and he says, what sorrow and grief I have over Yusuf. وَبِيَضَّتْ عَيْنَاهُ مِنَ الْحُزْنِ فَهُوَ كَظِيمٌ. and his eyes were blinded from how much tears he cried and the sorrow that he felt. قالوا تالله تفتأ تذكر يوسف. You still remember Yusuf? We assume that you will continue doing so unless you are fallen ill, with a terminal illness, or you will die doing so. He says to them, قال إنما أشكو بثي. He says to them at that point, I am not complaining to you. I complain my grief to whom? To Allah. For those who say, why do you Shia live in sorrow? Maulana, which is the highest of emotion? Let's say, which is the most humbling of emotion? The constant happiness of what floats away from you, or the sorrow of what passes you, or the happiness and the sorrow for what Allah wills? We find in the Quran, He says, so that they are not happy for what comes to them, nor do they show sorrow over what passes them. كي لا يفلحوا أو لا يفرحوا أحسنتم. So that they show no happiness over that which might come to them, nor sorrow over that which might pass them. Why? Because it's fleeting life. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi, he says, he who places his eyes on the reins of hope shall be met by his own demise. Meaning what? Meaning if you have hope in your heart, you have a desire, say, in your heart, and your biggest concern is this desire, and you neglect the world around you, you neglect your obligation in this world, you will be met by your own demise without realizing it. Sorrow within itself in Islam is not something wrong, especially if that sorrow is for Allah. We find in our history the Ahlul Bayt salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhim lidhikrihim sallu ala jaddihim wa abihim. They say the weepers in history are five. The weepers in history are five. Who are those five? The first of whom is Adam. The narrations say that Adam, when he was sent to earth, he wept and wept and wept until there were athar left, there were scars left on his face from how much he wept, or from how much he wept. Until Allah granted him, whom? Habil. Then when Habil was killed by his brother, he cried even more. So Allah granted him hibatullah, the gift from Allah. He was the first of them. The second one of them, Ya'qub. فَبَكَى عَلَى يُوسُف حَتَّى ذَهَبَ بَصَرُهُ, who cried over Yusuf until he lost his sight. قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ تَفْتَأُ تَذْكُرُ Yusuf. You still remember Yusuf, isn't it enough? The third of them is Yusuf. Yaqub over Yusuf, and Yusuf over his father Yaqub. طبعا now the question that begs itself before we move to Yusuf, why did Yaqub weep over Yusuf? Yaqub had how many sons? 12. One of them is Yusuf, correct? Maulana Yusuf, what does Yaqub tell him? قال أبتي, he says, oh my father, I see 11 kawkab, 11 planets. وَالشَّمْسُ وَالْقَمَرُ, and the moon and the sun I see prostrating before me. What does he say? Oh my son, do not tell this tale to your brothers. Then he says to him, وَيُتِمُّ نِعْمَتَهُ عَلَيْكَ وَعَلَى آل منو يعقوب كما أتمها على أبويك من قبل إبراهيم وإسحاق. He says, and Allah will complete the blessing upon you and the family of Yaqub, upon my whole family, مولانا فإتمام النعمة على يعقوب منه, Yusuf. That's why he was so protective of him, because he knew what would happen to him. So when he wept over him, he didn't weep over a son, he wept over a prophet, he wept over a Mawla, he wept over the source of Allah's blessing upon him. As for Yusuf, the narrations say that Yusuf used to weep in the prison day and night until the prisoners came to him. They said, either you weep during the day or during the night. Maulana, who does that remind you of? Of the fourth individual. قالوا يا علي قل لفاطمة إما تبكي ليلها أو نهارها. Tell Fatima to either cry her days or her nights. Maulana, he came to her, he said to her, Yabnata Rasulillah, I have built for you a home. The tree you used to sit under, they cut down. They don't want you to sit next to your grandfather's grave and cry. Ya Fatima, go ila Bayt al-Ahzan. Weep over there. Maulana, that she used to put her hand in the hand of Hassan and Hussein, go there from sunrise till sunset. Then she would return home. But when she became ill, she couldn't. So what would she do? She would cry as much as she can. Allah ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد ألا يشم مدى الزمان غواليا أبا صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام صرنا لياليا. The fifth one is Zainul Abidin Ali ibn al-Husayn, Tajul Bakka'in. The crowned Tajul Bakka'in shuni yani? The one who is crowned with weeping. Maulana, they say that Imam Zainul Abidin, after Karbala, his eye didn't see sleep, nor did his belly fill with food or water. They used to say every time they would put water in front of him, he would cry until his tears dripped into the water. That's why they say in the narration, when he was walking by a butcher, he heard his ghulam say, أَسَقِيتَ هَذَا الْكَبْشِ مَا. Did you give this sheep water before you slaughter it? They say he استوقفه الأمر. He stopped. He says, do you guys do that normally? قال بلى هكذا أدبنا الله وأدبنا جدك رسول الله. This is what we were taught by Allah and your grandfather the Prophet. They say he cried and he says, أبا يا حسين, oh my father, oh Hussein, حتى الكبش يسقى ما. Even the kabsh is given, even the lamb is given water. أبا يا Hussein. Maulana, they narrate Imam Zainul Abidin, when he buried Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, what did he do? They say he placed Imam al-Hussein, he buried Imam al-Hussein, he buried Ali al-Akbar at his feet, he buried Ali al-Asghar, Abdullah al-Radi' on the chest of his father. They say then when he finished, he covered the grave and he put a stone. What would he write on the stone? هذا ابن رسول الله لا هذا ابن فاطمة الزهراء no هذا ابن علي المرتضى هذا أبو عبد الله. They say no, he wrote هذا الحسين ابن علي الذي قتل عطشانا. This is al-Hussein, son of Ali, who was killed thirsty. Maulana, however, what impresses me or what amazes me, let's say, what amazes me is that the historians do not say whether Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan is from the Bakka'in. Maulana, and how could he not be? We recite in Ziyarat al-Nahiya al-Muqaddasa, As-salamu ala man nukithat dhimmatuh, As-salamu ala man hutikat hurmatuh, As-salamu ala man uriqa bil-dhulmi damah. This is the Imam saying his salam to his grandfather. السلام على المغسل بدم الجراح السلام على المجرع بكاسات الرماح السلام على المضام المستباح السلام على المنحور في الورى السلام على من دفنه أهل القرى السلام على المقطوع الوتين السلام على المحامي بلا معين، السلام على الشيب الخضيب، السلام على الخد التريب، السلام على البدن السليب، السلام على الثغر المقطروع بالقضيب، السلام على الرأس المرفوع، السلام على الأجسام العارية في الفلوات تنهشها الذئاب العاديات. Maulana, he continues, Assalamu ala, narrating, and then he says, Assalamu alayk, Salamu al-Arifi bi hurmatik, al-Mukhlisi fi wilayatik, المتقرب إلى الله بمحبتك، سلام من لو كان معك بالطفوف لوقاك بنفسه حد السيوف. He says, Salam, I give you my salam, the salam of he who, had I been with you on the day of Tufuf, that I would have sacrificed my own soul for you. وبذل حشاشته دونك للحتوف وجاهد بين يديك وناصرك على من بغى عليك وفداك بروحه وجسده وماله وولده وروحه لروحك فدا. May I myself be sacrificed for yourself. وأهله لأهلك وقاء. And may my family be sacrificed for your family. فَلَأَنْ أَخَّرَتْنِيَ الدُّهُورِ. However, if eons have come between me and you, وَعَاقَنِي عَنْ نَصْرِكَ الْمَقْدُورِ ولم أكن لمن حاربك محاربا ولمن نصب لك العداوة مناصبا فلأندبنك صباحا ومساء. Maulana Imam Zain al-Abidin cried for what, 25 years? Maulana Imam al-Hujjah, he says, and I will weep over you. I will call upon you day and night. وَلَا بِكِيَنَّ عَلَيْكَ بَدَلَ الدُّمُوعِ دَمًا. And I will weep over you instead of tears of blood instead of regular tears. حسرة عليك وتأسفا على ما دهاك وتلهفا حتى أموت بغصة الاكتئاب وبلوعة المصاب. However, Maulana, that is in Imam al-Ma'soom, but we find on the day of Ashura, a man by the name of Habib ibn Madahir al-Asadi. هنيئا لبني أسد فقط حبيب يكفيهم فخرا وعلوا. Habib ibn Madahir, when he came, Imam al-Hussein saw him crying. He says, Ya Habib, did you remember your family? Did you remember your kids? Habib, حسبك ما صنعت. He says, لا مولانا, I did not remember them. لقد استبدلت بأهلي أهلا وبمحلي محلا. He says, oh my Imam, oh Aba Abdullah, I have sacrificed my family for you and my place for instead of yours. He says to him, إذن لماذا تبكي? Why do you cry? He says, سيدي أبكتني هذه الواقفة بباب الخيمة. He says, Sayyidi, this woman that's standing at the foot of the tent, he looked at Zainab. قالت حبيب وما الذي يبكيك؟ قال مولاتي لما رأيتك تذكرت قول مولاي أمير المؤمنين فكأني بك يا ابنة علي على رمح ضالع بغير غطاء ولا وطاء وأنت تستغيثين فلا تغاثين. That's why they say, he says to her, I remembered what my Imam told me, where you will be without a protector on the back of a bony camel, without cover and without anything on it, while you call for assistance and you find none. They say, Maulana, Ashab al-Hussein all sacrificed themselves for al-Hussein, but by doing so they left Zainab wa akhawat Zainab. لهذا الشاعر يقول بهاليل والعلي يعتلوها وارواحهم كلها بذلوها الريحانة الهادي فدوها بس يا حيف زينب ما حضروها. اي والله تركوا زينب وحيدة فريدة على رمضاء كربلاء. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم اشغل الظالمين بالظالمين. اللهم اشغل الظالمين بالظالمين. اخرجنا من بينهم غانمين سالمين آمنين يا الله. اللهم بالحسين الوجيه وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه والتسعة المعصومين من بنيه، اللهم أعنا على عدونا يا الله. اللهم إنك ترى ما يحل بنا يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك فرجا قريبا عاجلا كلمح البصر وهو أقرب من ذلك. اللهم من أرادنا بسوء فرد، من كادنا فكده، شافي كل مريض لا سيما المعينين، فك كل أسير لا سيما المنظورين. اللهم ترحم على أمواتنا، على شهدائنا، على قادتنا، أبدلنا بهم خيرا يا الله. وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات أموات الحاضرين، بلغ اللهم الجميع ثواب الفاتحة معطرة بذكر محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.